A couple months back, I made 4 separate and distinct maps that showed what happened in Colombia when they decided to disarm the FARC and the ELN. It caused the right-wing paramilitaries to overrun the country, invade the western part of Venezuela, and contribute directly to the problems that we've seen in that country. Now, this article here talks about the jump in homicides in Medellin, but 3 other articles besides this confirm, and they're all up right now on Colombia Reports, everything I said at each stage. All 4 of those maps occurred, and we're going to cover that today because I kept those maps. Now, in case anyone doesn't know what's going on in Colombia, since the election of right-wing globalist Ivan Duque, the quote-unquote left-wing leaders have been getting assassinated left and right, literally every day. Colombia's authorities seem unable or hardly interested to curb the wholesale slaughter of the country's social leaders that has skyrocketed since a peace process came into force. Literally exactly the thing that I said 2 months ago. And they have the same problem down there. The most recent victims fell on Tuesday while most in the country were watching their national team soccer match against England. Bread and circuses applies everywhere. Now, this is the problem when you disarm one side in a war. Now, we're going to start with the first map. This is the first one that I created. This was explaining the issue in Venezuela. For years and years, you had the red dots, which represent the people of Colombia and Venezuela that were arming themselves to stand up against the wealthy, elitist, globalist paramilitaries that were attempting to take everything from them, traffic drugs, and enrich their leaders. In the process, creating these blue dots, these refugees that had to go to Venezuela and begin overwhelming the system. See, in the western part of Venezuela, this country at one time was the single wealthiest country in South America. It had absolutely no problem feeding its people. In fact, giving a lot of things away. In fact, gasoline, for the most part of this entire time down there, is free. In fact, the one time they had a little hiccup back in '89 is when a president of Venezuela, I forget his name now, actually floated the idea of charging 15 cents a gallon. That's how wealthy Venezuela was. So this was the stage. You had this running war between the right wing that controlled the media, of course, that tried to demonize the FARC and the ELN and make their guys seem like they were the good guys when really they were the rapists and the thugs and the thieves and the Blackwater types. Okay, you with me? This is what it was before the peace process. Here it is after the peace process. The FARC and the ELN are largely gone. And now, with the right-wing paramilitaries and the globalists having free run of Colombia to do whatever they want, the refugees flee into Venezuela from Colombia and begin overwhelming the system. These right-wing paramilitaries begin effecting the takedown of Venezuela. This is what happens when you take the guns away from the people. That's literally what this is. And this is what we've warned of in this country. And this is when things really started to heat up between the Colombians and the Mexicans. Now, here's what caused the real reason there was hyperinflation in Venezuela. And we've seen article after article about this. The reason no one could afford food. These paramilitaries would set up these shops on just this side of the border of Colombia and Venezuela. And they would send their guys in here with US dollars to buy up everything and bring it back across the border and set up shop, black markets. When these people ran out of supplies, with the Venezuelan government being a little bit behind the curve on this, if they're guilty of anything, it's that. they had to go over here. Now, they only took US dollars and Venezuelan bolivars for payment. They wouldn't take Colombian money. They would then take that paper money and remove it from Venezuela. I mean, giant truckloads of paper currency. This is what happened in our depression. We didn't have enough currency literally out there in the hands of the people. And that's why the Venezuelan government had to kick the printing of money into overdrive. And why these people eventually were paying these exorbitant prices. And why the Venezuelan government banned the US dollar. Because it was black market. Now, let's go back to the articles real quick. So here's this article about the government doing nothing, about the killing of these people trying to expose this. And of course, the murder rates are skyrocketing because the right-wing death squads are in charge now. We'll get to that one in a minute. But here it talks about last year, at least 170 community leaders were killed in Colombia, mainly in areas that fell under control of the FARC until the former guerrilla group's demobilization. Think tank Independencia reported 21 assassinations. While the UN is there with observers watching the quote-unquote peace process. They're only watching one group, though. Same thing here. The demobilization of the FARC, which effectively policed many parts of rural Colombia until mid-2016, seems to have worsened this age-old practice where the law often only exists in theory. 3 separate articles talking about the same thing. How the right-wing death squads now have free run all over Colombia. Now, the last map is this. Eventually, the Venezuelan government caught up, figured out what was going on, and didn't care about public opinion. They stood up and rearmed the FARC and the ELN, which moved back into Colombia, threw out the paramilitaries, and got rid of all the black markets. Now, this is why you're hearing all of the negative press about the FARC and the ELN, and like, oh, they're kidnapping people and killing them and all these horrible things, when nothing could be further from the truth. This is, what you see the red dots here, these are the people of Colombia and Venezuela, armed, protecting themselves against big globalists, elitist landowners, and drug traffickers that are shoving these people back out to the coast. These right-wing death squads, these are the guys that are in bed with the Sinaloan drug cartels. These are not the good guys, but these are Duque's guys. Duque, I guarantee you, is going to cause these guys, their numbers to swell, because he's going to start handing out cash, hand over fist. Now, you might ask, well, where is he going to get that cash? We go back to this map. Down here in the corner, we can see exactly where he's going to get that cash. Now, this number down here shows the foreign aid to Colombia. We've also shown other charts that show direct correlation between the drug trade and the amount of money going into Colombia. At one time, this number, 325 million, was almost $1 billion. But this number now is over 500 million and going up. This is where U.S. tax money is going to go to finance big banker death squads that are going to slaughter wholesale the people of Colombia and Venezuela that want to stand up for their rights. You see, down there, that's what the left wing is. People standing up for their rights. And we'll leave with this. I'll zoom back out here. And this tells the story clearly, very clearly. An area the size of Costa Rica during that war was stolen from the people. 8 million hectares. The phenomenon has been so enormous it has become one of the significant reasons why more than half of the country's national territory is private property of, according to the UN, only 1% of the population. And the FARC and the ELN only account for 6% of that land. And why they have that land is a completely different story for another video. Only 500,000 of the 8 million hectares are in the hands of the FARC. That means 93.75% of the stolen land is in the hands of right-wing death squads and paramilitaries financed by the government of Colombia. But tell me again, which country here is the problem? Which country are we sanctioning? Which country did we think about invading? I think it's pretty clear now what the story is, to anyone who's willing to actually do the research. The differences are striking. But 11 minutes. I won't waste a whole lot more of your time, but this is what happened, and this is what's going on now. And now with Duque in charge of Colombia, things are going to get hot quick. Like, share, subscribe.